Good evening, everybody. Chair, can I confirm that the meeting is now live to the public and being recorded? Over to you.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to members of the public, councillors and honorary aldermen to East Devon District Council's virtual council meeting on Wednesday, the 28th of April, 2021. I am Councillor Cathy Gardner and your chair for the meeting. I would also like to welcome anyone watching the meeting via the live streaming. All participants here today are taking part remotely and the committee is being viewed online and recorded. So please bear this in mind throughout the meeting, and may I remind you to be careful with your language. May I also remind members that the Code of Conduct applies throughout this meeting. We also reserve the right to remove and disconnect any participant who is disrupting the meeting by whatever means. As this meeting is dependent on an internet connection and a power supply, in the event of a break in the internet connection or a power cut, please bear with us as we try to reconnect. If we are not able to reconnect after 15 minutes, the meeting will be adjourned and reconvened at a later date. Please check the committee page on our website for further details. Please make sure all microphones are muted when you're not speaking to avoid any background noise levels. Please keep your points short and do not interrupt when someone else is speaking. If you wish to comment, please raise your electronic blue hand and wait to be called. All councillors have been sent the agenda for today's meeting, and any members of the public who want to view the agenda can do so by visiting our website at www.eastdevon.gov.uk. We will now start the committee by doing a roll call of all members here present. Can you please now unmute your microphone, and when you hear your name, please confirm by saying present. When you have confirmed you are present, please remember to mute your microphone again. Thank you. Sue.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Armstrong.
Present.
Councillor Arnott.
Present.
Councillor Barrow. Okay, come back. Councillor Bickley.
Present.
Councillor Blakey.
Present.
Councillor Bloxham.
Present.
Councillor Bond.
Present.
Councillor Brown.
Present.
Councillor Chamberlain.
Present.
Councillor Chapman.
Present.
Councillor Chubb.
Present.
Councillor Coleman. Councillor Davey.
Present.
Councillor Desarum.
Present. Thank you, Sue.
Councillor Dent.
Present.
Councillor Gardner.
Present.
Councillor Gazzard.
Present.
Councillor Hall.
Present, Sue. Thank you.
Councillor Hartnell. Councillor Hawkins.
Present.
Councillor Hookway.
Present.
Councillor Hughes. Councillor Hughes, I'm sure I've seen you in the meeting. No? Okay, I'll come back to those who haven't answered the first time. Councillor Ingham.
Present.
Councillor Jackson.
Present.
Councillor Johns. Okay. Councillor Young.
Present.
Councillor Key.
Present.
Councillor King. Okay. Councillor Ledger.
Present, thank you, Sue.
Councillor Manley.
Present.
Councillor Moulding.
Present.
Councillor Parr.
Present.
Councillor Pepper. Councillor Pook.
Present.
Councillor Pratt.
Present. Thank you.
Councillor Ranger.
Present.
Councillor Rixon.
Present.
Councillor Rowland.
Present. Thanks, Sue.
Councillor Rylance.
Present.
Councillor Skinner.
Present.
Councillor Taylor,
Present.
Councillor Thomas,
Present.
Councillor Twist,
Present.
Councillor Wibley,
Present, thank you, Sue.
Councillor Woodward,
Present.
Councillor Ragg,
Present.
Councillor Chris Wright, Councillor Tom Wright.
Present, thank you, Sue.
Can I just go over one or two names that I think people might be in, and I'm not sure if they've disappeared off the Zoom recording or not. Councillor Barrow. Okay. Councillor Coleman. Councillor Hartnell. Oh, Councillor Hartnell's just coming in. Councillor Pepper. Okay, and Councillor Chris Wright. Okay, Chair. I think that's everybody.
I'm in as well, Sue.
How are
Councillor
you?
Hugh. I couldn't get the mute. Something wrong with the mute button, but still sorted there.
Sorry, can you just confirm who that was? Oh,
Councillor Hugh.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Hughes. Thank you.
Sue, it's John Loudon. I don't recall my name being called.
Okay, that's probably my error, but I can hear that you're present. Thank you, Councillor Loudon.
Thank you, Sue.
Hi, Sue. It's Councillor Hartnell here. I'm just running a bit late. I've only just joined as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Hartnell. Thank you.
Sorry, Sue, I don't know if you heard mine or not. Councillor Johns?
Yes, I saw that you'd come in. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johns.
Thank you.
I think that's it, Chair. I think it's back to you.
Thank you very much. I confirm that we're quorate today, 1/4 of members being in attendance. Agenda item 1 is public speaking. There are 2 members of the public who registered to speak. I would like to invite the speakers into the meeting. Please note that you have 3 minutes to speak, and a 30-second reminder will be given by one of the officers, I believe. The first public speaker we have registered is Mr. Del Haggerty. Is Mr. Haggerty here?
Trying to check.
No, Chair.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm just checking now, and no, it doesn't appear that he's joined the meeting yet. So
Okay.
I will see if I can reach him. But if you want to progress to your second public speaker, Chair, in the meeting.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. And
Chair,
the second,
Chair, sorry to interrupt. Can I just answer? I've just been in a meeting with Del Haggerty, so I know he's definitely available and is anticipating joining this meeting. So I hope he can access the meeting. Thank you.
that's fine, no problem. We'll go on to our second public speaker, Mr. Janine Gardner, and I can definitely see Janine.
Good evening, members, and thank you, Chair. I'm speaking tonight in relation to the item on our agenda relating to the Community Governance Review for Cranbrook. Sue, do you want to let me know when my 3 minutes start?
We'll give you a 30-second warning, Janine. Okay. Oh,
Okay, thank you. So the purpose of... Sorry, may I carry on?
Yes. Yes, please do.
Thank you. The purpose of this council meeting tonight is to... Sorry. Please do let me know when I start.
Please just speak, Janine. The sound cuts out occasionally, but just speak, Janine, it's fine.
Okay. So the purpose of this council meeting tonight is to consider the recommendation of Cabinet to undertake a community governance review for Cranbrook of the current town council area, with a review to establish whether expansion of the current town boundary is considered appropriate and to agree terms of reference and arrangement for consultation. The decision is not whether the parish boundary of Cranbrook be changed. That will come later in the light of the review and further reports which will be brought to Cabinet. The Town Council requested the review to provide clarity on the way forward for both the Town Council and its neighbouring parishes. Members will be aware that the Town Council has demonstrated that it has both both an appetite and an aptitude to undertake responsibility for the ownership, management and maintenance of public open space. And the fact that we know that going forward, both East Devon and Devon councils are likely to restrict their activities in the town to those which are required by statute. We can expect therefore that the local administration, whoever that might be, will need to pick up the same roles and responsibilities which to date have been picked up by the town council. It's the town council's view that an expanded Cranbrook will be best administered by a single local council rather than several. However, should East Devon consider that a review is not needed or that the existing boundary should not be changed, the result will be that the surrounding parishes will have to take responsibility for open spaces within their respective parishes or to allow estate rent charges to and suggested that the town boundary remains unchanged and that any expansion of Cranbrook to circa 8,000 homes be within the existing town boundary. We know that's not realistic nor feasible. It is for East Devon as the planning authority to determine the eventual size and scale of the town and to allocate land for strategic development through the local plan and the emerging development plan document for Cranbrook DPD. It has also been review is premature and should await the outcome of the DPD, but we disagree. Both can run parallel. The key point here is that there is nothing which has emerged from the DPD to date which gives any indication that the investor will be minded to reject the proposed. There may be discussions about issues like land value, but these do not impact on the proposed scope, scale and layout of the town. The town council has been consistent in its view that it supports surrounding settlements and their desire to maintain their independence and separation. That remains the case today, despite the boundary issue being raised again. None of the proposed boundary changes lead to the town joining up with the surrounding settlements, and we want to ensure that that remains the case. The development of Cranbrook to around 8,000 homes is the element in East Devon's local plan delivery, with over half of the district housing delivery being provided in Cranbrook. Thank you. That has been the case for many years, and the proposals at DPD are nothing new. The only question is that the expansion areas will be situated within a revised boundary of the town or remain within the existing boundaries of each surrounding parish council. And the purpose of the review is to explore those options. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Janine. Can I ask the leader, Councillor Arnott, just to make a quick comment about that, if he wishes?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Only that, as Ms Gardner has rightly pointed out, this does come up in the Cabinet Minutes, 9A, I think. So we can, Council can have a look at that point. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Janine. Do we have Mr Haggerty online yet?
No, I'm sorry, Chair, not so far.
Okay, in that case, we'll need to move on with the agenda. Agenda item 2, minutes of the meeting of Council of the 24th of February 2021. If you have any comments on these minutes, please raise your electronic blue hand. I can't see any blue hands being raised on those minutes. Can I now invite members to vote in favour or against agreeing the minutes? And as usual, voting is done by raising your, by using the green cross, red tick.
Okay, for the benefit of those watching online, voting is underway. Okay, Chair, I've got 41 voting in favour.
Thank you. I confirm that these are agreed. Agenda item 3 is apologies. We have received apologies from Councillor Allen and understand that he has experienced a difficult time at present, and our thoughts are with him during this very difficult period for him and his family. Have we received other apologies, Sue?
Yes, we have, Chair. Councillor Haywood, Councillor Howe, Councillor Miller, Councillor McCollum, Councillor Cahill, Councillor Jarvis, Councillor Bailey, and I also have Another 3 apologies from Honorary Alderman Christine Drew, John Jeffrey and Sarah Randall Johnson.
Thank you very much. Agenda item 4 is declarations of interests. Are there any declarations of interest? If anyone has one, please raise your blue hand. Please remember to unmute yourself and state your declaration, including which agenda item your declaration relates to, if it is a personal or prejudicial declaration, and what exactly the interest is. I can see a couple of hands raised. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, Chair. Agenda item 8, questions 3 to 5, and agenda item 9A. I am a member of Cranbrook Town Council, which represent us in relation to both those items. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Councillor Blakey.
Thank you, Chair. Similarly to Sam Hawkins, declare a personal interest as a member of Cranbrook Town Council regarding matters 8, 3 to 5, and 9 also. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chamberlain.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I couldn't unmute. Yeah, just to note that I'm Broadcliffe Parish Councillor. Obviously, that relates to the, I haven't got my agenda in front of me because I'm on my mobile. I'm the Cranbrook, obviously, item, and I'm a resident of Broadcliffe Station, which is obviously neighbouring that area as well.
Thank you. Councillor Bloxham.
Yeah, personal interest as a member of Cranbrook Town Council for agenda item 8, questions 3 to 5, and agenda item 9.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands raised at this point. Agenda item 5 is matters of urgency. There are no matters of urgency. Agenda item 6, announcements from the chair and or the leader. Firstly, I would like to hand over to the monitoring officer and legal officer, Henry Gordon-Lennox, who has some news for us about the need to meet in person. Henry.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm sure some of you will now be aware that the High Court has handed down its decision in the recent case brought by lawyers in local government and ADSO, which has hoped would extend the ability, or not extend, make permanent the ability to hold virtual meetings. Unfortunately, the case was dismissed, so it was unsuccessful, which means effectively from the 7th of May, we are faced with the prospect of a return to physical meetings going forward. Obviously, the government roadmap makes that easier as things go on, but it is more and more acute for the next month and a bit. Obviously, work now continues to deal with our approach for that. There have already been discussions and testing, and obviously we'll update members in due course about how things go forward from here. But certainly the initial expectation is that for the committee members at least, they will be physically present, or have to be physically present to be able to vote on any matter. But hopefully we'll be able to continue with the Zoom meeting for attendance by officers and by the public and by non-committee members. So that's the sort of the roadmap of what it might look like. But obviously we'll give more detail as things unfold over the next couple of days. Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions if anybody wants to ask anything.
Thank you, Henry. I understand this has caused consternation amongst members and indeed officers, and the difficulty of having to go back to face-to-face meetings in a confined space. I can see a couple of hands raised. I think Councillor Thomas's hand went up fast. Councillor Thomas.
Fast and first, Chair. Quick question for Henry, the obvious one. Committee meetings I can see that we can handle, but full council meetings like this would be, shall we say, politely entertaining to try and meet any form of COVID compliance at all in Blackdown House for the foreseeable future, or frankly anywhere else. Does that mean that in fact we're going to take an early decision to reschedule the annual meeting?
Well, Chair, if I'm happy to take that if you'd like me to straight away, or whether you wanted to say anything first.
I have already been discussing this with Henry, obviously. My preference was to postpone until vaccination is covered everybody over the age of 18, but Henry's informed me that that's legally not going to be allowed. Henry, do you want to comment?
Yeah, so the Local Government Act, which is now again, the legislation that applies here, requires us to hold the annual meeting in either March, April or May. And obviously we're now close to May, so that's the legal requirement. We need to hold it. You're absolutely right that we're not going to be able to do that in Blackdown House. The restrictions are going to prevent us from doing that safely. So our only option is going to be to hire a bigger venue to be able to do it. We have penciled in a date at West Point to facilitate that. And again, the finer detail of what that's going to look like is something we're working up over the next day or so. But there is a provisional approach to deal with that. Although I said earlier about having sort of a virtual, or dare I use the word hybrid, but a sort of a hybrid approach to it for what would be a council meeting held physically, that's not going to be able to be possible. So that will be a complete reversion to a physical meeting, both for members and public press and officers, but obviously we'll be looking at a meeting venue that is big enough to do that safely, and hence why West Point is the sort of obvious port of call.
Thank you, Henry. Next one, I think, is Councillor Ragg.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Henry, in view of the government's rule that public can't meet until later in May, how do we stand on that? Would we be considered lawbreakers? I know it's not a law, but it is a rule and it's enforceable, as I understand, by the police. And the other thing is, what is the capacity at Blackdown House for members of a committee to meet? What number?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Eileen, Henry?
Yeah, so the initial, I'll deal with that a bit first. So the initial assessment is that the chamber can hold 16 members, which effectively covers off all of our committees. So other than council, so all the underlying committees we would be capable of holding at Blackdown House. Planning at 16 is our biggest. That would necessitate a very minimal public access. I perhaps ought to have said that the court have effectively reserved for further consideration how that relates to members of the public and the need to provide access to the public. But if one assumes the court say you need to provide public access, we can provide three seats up on the public gallery to at least meet the legal requirement. There's no minimum number of public who should be permitted, so we can comply with that. Obviously, if you have a smaller committee, you may be able to get members of the public into the chamber as well. But I think that's sort of the finer detail we will need to work through. But we're happy that we will be able to do it be compliant in that regard. As to West Point, we sort of provisionally asked if 80 could be accommodated safely, and West Point is saying that they could. I hear what you say about the public gatherings. I'm not sure a council meeting in that respect would count as a public gathering, but that's again the finer detail we're going to have to work through as to how that would relate to members of the public being permitted into that, and how the two might work together. Although one could say the court haven't been particularly helpful in precluding virtual meetings, if they were able to say the public do not need to be permitted, then that would certainly alleviate that concern. But that part of the decision is still awaited.
It's a nonsense.
Councillor Gazzard.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that, Henry. Yeah, the decision is not at all helpful. I just wanted clarification. You will be obviously in touch with the town clerks as soon as you have any further advice, because obviously Exmouth Town Council leased the building from the District Council, and we need to know how we going to be able to move forward. So I just wanted some reassurance that you'll be contacting the town clerks as and when you can.
Yes, I'll certainly be sending something out tomorrow to highlight to those who don't already know that the judgment's been handed down. I mean, there are some acute difficulties, and Exmouth might well be one of them. It's not going to be within my control to dictate to them how or nor should I tell them how they've got to deal with the issues that they've got to work through. All I can do is effectively signpost to the judgment and highlight that there's going to have to be steps taken. I know this is work that was already in progress with Dalk and others now to deal with this thing. So I'm very happy to help clerks, but obviously it's going to be down to them to reconcile the difficulties that it presents for them, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Councillor Key.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, that's one of the things that I was going to say, because I believe CALC and DALC are looking into this problem, aren't they? And I just wondered how far they got with it to enable us to do it, because I know for a fact that with the parish councils that I've got in my ward, in actual fact, with Colin Brown, I mean, some of the halls will never, I mean, they won't even accommodate sort of the parish councils, let alone any public that want to come as well. So we are really up against it.
Yeah, and I think there's a degree of one of the major problems for the town and parish councils was the ability for them to take decisions during a period when they couldn't meet, which, you know, luckily in a sense the district council has covered off. So certainly the advice to the towns and parishes was to get your house in order now prior to the 7th of May to enable to work through this period on the assumption that the case is lost. Now, I hope, as I understand it, you know, most of the towns and parish clerks would have seen now. Hopefully they'll have been able to take the steps to deal with it. I'll have to be honest and say, obviously, the ability for me to help supervise 60-odd parish councils in this period is going to be nigh on impossible, bearing in mind the period we're running into as well, and the need to deal with our own annual meeting. But yeah, what help I can and my teams can give, we will gladly give.
Thank you, Henry. Obviously, we don't want to spend too long discussing this because it's got to work itself out over the next few days. Councillor Arnott.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm mindful of what you said. I'll be very brief. So obviously the courts are blameless in this. They've made a legal decision. I can see why they've come to it. This just sits at the government's door. It is a byproduct of their indolence and their complete lack of understanding of local government. I think I'm coming from exactly the same angle that I imagine Councillor Thomas is. This is so dangerous. You know, I mean, forgive me, get the violins out. I'm in the extremely vulnerable category. I haven't had a second jab yet. There are people who live with people who are extremely vulnerable and seriously ill. Most of our younger members, by which I mean, you know, under 40 around here, haven't had a first jab, not even a first jab. So the thought of them being forced to gather in one room, however big it is, to have a full council is absolutely ridiculous. So I think we need to do a few things collectively. First of all, obviously this is fresh. I mean, this is a few hours old. And as you say, Chair, we need to reflect on this. Mr. Gordon-Lennox has given the legal advice that he's given, which is absolutely correct. But I think we will go, obviously, as Devon leaders, I'm sure we'll be in touch with each other tomorrow and the chief execs, because we had written to government in very strong terms, very unified, warning that this would happen. The problems for parish councils, we all know, are self-evident, and it will be havoc. And there's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it. They'll be all over the shop on this, and they will be phoning Henry for advice. And you know, he will have his you know, sort of feet run off. So what I would suggest we do in terms of making it work for us somehow is that we do what we did in the lead up to the last annual meeting. There was a slightly, I'd say, uncomfortable process for me that was February, March, April, where all group leaders met with the monitoring officer, with the CEO and any other appropriate people, you, Chair, as well, and perhaps the Vice Chair. And I think I would suggest if all the other group or party leaders are amenable to that, that's how we proceed, so that we do this in a unified way. You know, we've got to deal with the hand we're dealt with. If it was me, if I had a free hand, obviously it's self-interest because it keeps me in the post for a bit longer. But to be quite honest, on public health grounds, I think we should be waiting until people have had at least one jab, probably two. But it looks like we're not going to. The final point is, as I understand it, a question to Henry: is there any realistic chance that Parliament may be able to put through some emergency legislation? What have you heard, Henry, through the sort of network?
I haven't heard anything that suggests that's what they're going to do. I mean, clearly the bodies that brought the case have immediately switched from outcome to wanting to lobby government to do exactly that, to deal with it quickly. I think, and if I remember rightly, the concluding bit of the judgment is effectively indicating that government should take steps to deal with this. A time frame, obviously the recess. So I think realistically we're looking at the early part of autumn, I imagine. Maybe earlier with a fair wind, but I think you can expect it to be around the September period, I would guess. But of course, as restrictions ease, then the issue becomes less acute. I mean, it is clearly acute now because of the roadmap to recovery, the relaxation of the restrictions, and as you say, the fact that the jabs will be happening more and more, and more of the population will be covered off. But at this time, it is all the more acute.
Thank you. I'd like to be able to move on pretty swiftly. Councillor Wright, do you have a quick comment to make?
Yes, very quick. I tend to agree that the government has got a history of passing legislation very quickly when it wants to. So why, if this isn't contentious and they are keen on local democracy, why they can't hold a special session and pass it just to continue the present arrangement, I just don't know. But if we do have to go to somewhere like West Point, it's not too soon to start making sure the practical facilities are there, such as the ability for us all to get decent broadband connection for our papers online, and similarly facilities so that we can record the meetings.
Right. Actually,
that's all I want to say.
I can actually answer that. That's already been considered. There's been a lot of discussions about the practicalities of what's going to happen, and there's yet more work to do. So I know the team are well ahead on those lines.
That's refreshing to know. Thank you, Chair.
I'd also like to announce the sad resignation of Councillor Luke Jeffrey as an EDC councillor and ward member for Hondon St Michael's recently. He was elected in May 2019 and made a valuable contribution to the work of the council in his role. I'd like to thank him for the service he gave while serving EDDC and wish him all the best in future endeavours. I think to lose yet another new and young councillor is a real pity. And whilst I understand his reasons for leaving, I do think it is really, really sad that he found himself in the position that he did. And I really regret that. This council needs new young blood coming in to replace the older ones amongst us who've already had our vaccines many weeks ago. Councillor Ragg was going to make a quick comment about Luke. Councillor Ragg, can you keep your comment really brief, please, and we can move on?
Yes, of course, Chair. Yes,
thank you,
and thank you for allowing me to. Luke was a highly valued member, not just of our group, but I believe of the council and of the Democratic Alliance, the partnership. He had a considerable knowledge of environmental issues, and he brought that into real reality at East Devon when he proposed an amendment which resulted in the lowering of our carbon neutral target by 10 years. And that is a huge mark to make within just 2 years of being a councillor. I believe he's probably the youngest ever councillor we've had on East Devon, certainly the youngest I can ever remember. And we understand his reasons. He's in his final year of university degree, and any of us, you know, those of us who've experienced that know the pressure that there is. And so all I can say is that we wish him very well in the future, and I'm sure he'll go a long way, and I'm sure it's not the last we'll hear of him. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Eileen. Agenda item 7's confidential or exempt items. There are no confidential or exempt items tonight. Agenda item 8, to answer questions asked by members of the council pursuant to procedure rules number 9.2 and 9.5. 9 questions were received and all have been given answers in writing, and those have been published prior to the meeting. The questions were submitted by Councillor Miller, Councillor Hawkins, Councillor Blakey, Councillor Bloxham, Councillor de Sarum and Councillor Allen. Two of those members are not present at the meeting tonight. So I will jump to question 3 from Councillor Hawkins. Do you have a supplementary, Sam?
Yes, please, Chair. Why does it cost this council 2.7 times as much to empty bins in Cranbrook compared to Seaton and Axminster? And can evidence be provided relating to the operational variables such as distance from depot, team size and staffing involved, and whether the operation is in-house or subcontracted? In the absence of that, it is hard to judge whether the information provided is factually accurate or even relevant.
Thank you. Can the portfolio holder provide an answer? You're on mute still, Jeff.
I thought the answers we've given to your questions did answer, but I think you will find that the charges in Axminster is specifically for picking up a bin. I don't think it is that price now. I believe it's more. Also, the bin collection in Cranbrook does the staff that collect the bins do collect the litter around the bins as well, which is not in the contract for elsewhere. So you're not comparing like with like. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Councillor Blake, question 4. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, please, Chair. Given that the response from the portfolio holder has not answered my original question, could he please tell the members, from the sum of approximately £558,000, which is budgeted for the aggregate of litter bin emptying and street cleaning, what is the proportion of that budget allocated to bin emptying and therefore by deduction the proportion allocated to street cleaning, so that we can all understand exactly how unfairly and unreasonably the scandalously wide differentials in pricing have been applied to Street Scenes town and parish council customers. Thank you.
Councillor Young?
No, I can't give you those figures off the top of my head, Councillor Blakey. I would give a written answer provided by the officers as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bloxham, question 5. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Can I firstly thank the portfolio holder for the reply? And as mentioned earlier in the reply to Councillor Hawkins, the answer includes the statement that the costs include street cleansing and litter picking around the bins. This statement is factually incorrect. Cranbrook Town Council is charged separately for this element. However, I welcome the suggestion to have further engagement with the Town Council with a view to reporting to Cabinet so that the implications in terms of additional costs in relation to Cranbrook can be considered fully. Can I therefore ask the portfolio holder for an assurance that the ward members will be involved in that review and receive a commitment regarding timescales for the review in the very near future?
Councillor Young?
It's me again. I totally acknowledge that our facilities and services are not uniform, and that's throughout the district. But this goes back to when EDC was formed, taking control of urban councils, then further complicating by trying to develop a new town from scratch. I think we all agree not everything is perfect, and in hindsight, we could and should have done it differently. But we are where we are, and Cranbrook has refuge bins that are on land that is Cranbrook's Town Council's land. And we as a district council agreed a contract that is specific to their requirements. In the case of Cranbrook, it was originally agreed that the open spaces and parks would be controlled by a management company, paid for by the residents through a management fee. This was later changed and the Town Council took over the responsibility and moving the management fees to a precept on the rates. At the time, I could see that made perfect sense. I need to explain that the standard arrangement for every new estate within the district. That's in the West End, Cranbrook, and in Exmouth, all these estates. It's down to the householders paying for a management fee to manage their open spaces. As a district council, we are responsible for the highways and land next to highway once it's been adopted. And in the case of Cranbrook, a lot of the roads that you are requiring bins to be placed or close to have not been adopted by the county council, and therefore it's down to the developer to pay. Unfortunately, I and our officers cannot undo the complicated network of arrangement fees, land ownership, and everything else in a single action. But I can tell you that we are working and willing, very willing, to work with you and every other town and village to provide a better arrangement. But it's going to take some time and a lot of effort. I hope that explains that, and I will give you some ideas of time when I get back from some ideas from the officers, if that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Young. That sounds like a really tricky problem for Cranbrook. Finally, Councillor de Saram, question 7. Do you have a supplementary question?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I do. I do have one. And thank you, Councillor Rowland, for your response. There are many supplementary questions which I could ask at this time, but I shall confine myself to just this particular one, namely that Councillor Rowland stated back in March that EDDC is going to take 300,000 from the general reserves that will reduce that to its lowest level. Obviously, he stated at that time we can't continue to use these reserves going into the future to support income, and certain car parking charges would eventually have to be increased from April 22. But by grasping over this former car park on this occasion, whatever the condition it was in, and losing the potential 19k of income, I asked the portfolio at this time, when you're also dipping into the reserves, how can you justify to the public this action, and does it make financial sense in a crisis to grasp over your assets and get very little income back in return? Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Rowland.
Thank you, Councillor de Saram, for your supplementary question. I thought I'd explained in the answer the rationale that was used behind this, having taken on board the views of the Queen's Drive delivery group that's wanted to return the space for community open space. And I mentioned in that reply that the temporary car park agreement had expired. So if you were to consider extending that and making it into a permanent car park, I mentioned what the cost would be, which far outweigh what has been spent to turn it into a community use car park at the moment. And my understanding of the situation as well is that the gross costs that were mentioned in terms of loss of car park income, that was a worst case basis, whereby because of other alternative car parks in that area that are controlled by East Devon District Council, that anybody that was previously using that temporary car park would find alternative spaces to use. I made a point actually at the weekend of driving around that area, and there were certainly other spaces available, even though it was a very bright, sunny, clear day with many visitors obviously enjoying themselves. So I hope that does reassure Councillor de Saram. As he mentioned in his question, I did regret having, as a finance portfolio holder, having to increase the council tax, but that was looking at the overall situation across the whole district, which obviously has to be taken into account.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jack. Moving on to agenda item 9, reports from the Cabinet and Council's committees and questions on those reports. Can I receive the minutes of the following committees and approve any recommendations? Recommendations are summarised on pages 31 to 34 of your agenda. So firstly, I ask the leader please to present the minutes of Cabinet held virtually on the 3rd of March 2021.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to present these reports for the 3rd of March 2021, minute numbers 332 to 350. And as you will note, Chair, there are a number of recommendations from Cabinet to Council that need to be resolved this evening at minute number 340, at minute number 344, and at minute number 346 and 348. So may I ask Chair Mr. Gordon-Lennox to advise how we should proceed through? There's quite a lot of resolutions there we've got to get through. What's the best way to sort of get those voted on? One at a time, or?
So, and also minute 337's there for approval as well. Chair, none of these have been called, so you can just take an en bloc vote for them.
Thank you.
Just to approve the minute.
That was my intention. So therefore, I think we need to invite members to vote in favour or against using the green tick or the red cross. And if you wish to abstain, you can use your electronic hand to abstain. Can all members vote now, please?
I don't know whether you're trying to say the answer, Sue, but you're on mute.
So for the benefit of those watching online, the vote has now taken place and we have 36 for and 3 against and 2 abstentions, Chair. Do you concur with that, Sue?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll call upon the leader again, please, to present the minutes of Cabinet held virtually on the 17th of March 2021.
Thank you very much, Chair, and also thank you for giving me the opportunity to present these minutes, which are minute numbers 351 to 356. And again, there is at least one, I think one, to Council in that, Henry, but there might be 2.
Thank you, Leader. I think there's no called minutes here, so again, as before, we will vote en bloc on those minutes. Can I now invite members to vote in favour or against, as before?
There I've got 39 people voting for and 4 against. Have you got any abstentions there, Debbie? Can't see any abstentions.
No, no abstentions, Sue.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll invite the leader again, please, to present the meetings of Cabinet held virtually on the 31st of March. And we do, on this occasion, have one called minute.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, I'd like to present minute numbers 357 to 381 from the 31st of March 2021.
Thank you. We have one called minute 365 of Cabinet held on the 31st of March 2021. That's the minutes of the Arts and Culture Forum, I believe. Councillor Moulding, you've called the minute.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And this relates to item minute 365, as you say, minutes of the Arts and Culture Forum held on the 24th of February. That followed a meeting of the Cabinet on the 3rd of February, which actually gave a report on economic recovery, where the service lead for growth, development and prosperity gave a description of the proposed AIR Fund, Adaptation, Innovation and Resilience. And a big thing was made of this, particularly with regard to considerable amounts of money, about £1 million from the Business Rate Pilot Reserve, in conjunction with monies from the Additional Restrictions Grant, to provide grant opportunities for a number of different organisations and initiatives. And at the meeting I attended of the Arts and Culture Forum, there was a considerable presentation that was given. There were members of the public present at that meeting and members of various arts organisations who were told that they would be able to apply for this fund. Additionally, the portfolio holder for economy, asset management and regeneration, he attended a meeting of the town council at Axminster and told town councillors that there was this huge amount of money available, and why wouldn't people want to get together, put together bids for the AIR Fund. Now, I had a perceived date in my mind of early March when this fund would become available and people could start putting in applications. But that time came and went and nothing happened. So I wrote to the portfolio holder for economy, asset management and regeneration. And after this huge declaration of money that was going to be forthcoming, he replied to me that there were problems with the ARG scheme rules, and therefore the AIR money was less likely, or at least delayed. And the paper explained that there were funding, that the funding is no longer guaranteed, and he found it very frustrating. Now, what I need, I think, and what we all need, is clarification, because this fund was first of all declared at the cabinet meeting, followed up by Arts and Culture. It's been presented to members of the public at meetings and various other organisations, and people who I've spoken to are very anxious to start putting in bids for this money. Is it going to be there? That's my question.
Chair, in the absence of the portfolio holder, would it be helpful for me to take that?
Councillor Rowland has already raised his hand.
Well, then I'm delighted to let Jack come.
I know that the relevant portfolio holder is on holiday tonight. So, Councillor Rowland, can you give a...
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was going to step in because Councillor Haywood is not here. And having been involved in some of the discussions around this subject, I can give an answer to Councillor Moulding. The setting up of that AIR Fund was done in good faith based on the information that was available at that time. And what subsequently has happened, and very recently, is that government's advice has come out that the existing ARG fund needs to be fully spent by the 30th of June. And that the money that was put aside out of that fund, for this AIR Fund, wouldn't qualify as spent money. However, we are obviously keen to make sure that that money is spent by the 30th of June, but that does open up the window of further money coming down the track for a further ARG fund where we can still set up an AIR Fund. So although it's delayed, it doesn't mean it's totally off of the agenda altogether. It just means that the timescales have changed because of the advice that's been received by this council, where the original decision was made in good faith based on the information that was available at that time. I hope that reassures Councillor Moulding.
Thank you, Councillor Rowland. We'll now need to vote on those minutes, please. Can members please vote as before?
Okay, Chair, I have 30 voting in favour and 9 voting against.
And 1 abstention, Chair.
Okay.
Thank you. I think the next on the list is Councillor Brown. I've got my pages in the right order. Please excuse me while I make sure. Councillor Brown, minutes of scrutiny committee held virtually on the 4th of March 2021. Councillor Brown, can you present those minutes, please? We do have a called minute.
I present the minutes of the scrutiny committee meeting held on the 4th of March, minutes number 131 to 139. However, I would like to make it clear the recommendations from the scrutiny committee are not as a result of impartial scrutiny debate, but recommendations sent by private emails to certain members of the committee by a member of cabinet, proposing recommendations that the committee should make, and in doing so, exerted undue influence and undermined the role of scrutiny
Brown, I
at
believe
EDDC.
you're
Thank you.
making allegations about an event that is in the past and has been dealt with in the past. It doesn't relate to the minutes of the meeting. The minutes of the meeting are as presented. Councillor Ranger, did you mean to have your hand up as Vice Chair?
Chair, I wonder if I could, I think this might relate to an amendment that was,
Yes.
If I know, so on the 8th of April, there was a subsequent meeting of scrutiny which resolved to make an amendment to the minutes. The minutes that are presented today don't include that amendment, partly because of the timing of when the agendas would have been published or looked to be published, and that the minutes weren't ready in time. So if I can just say that on in the section that deals with, it's headed, where are we? Comments and questions raised by committee members and responses from the Chief Executive and Mark Evident, including, and then there are 2 bullet points that need to be added. And the first one is early informal verbal intervention in the event of any suggestion of bullying should be considered. And the second one is restorative justice as a form of mediation should be considered. And as I say, the scrutiny committee accepted that they should be included. So it's just a note for council that that's the case. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Henry. We have one called minute number 137 has been called by Councillor Bond and also by Councillor Parr. Councillor Bond, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to express my concerns about that particular meeting. I gather now we've got recommendations that have changed, but that's immensely complicated. I have only been a councillor for 8 years, but in the time I have never known a member of the leading group attempting to influence the outcome of the scrutiny debate. The cabinet member stated that they acted solely on their own behalf, but may I, through you, Chair, request that the cabinet member respects process and allows non-cabinet members to do their job and scrutinise without interference. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bond. I'm absolutely certain that that cabinet member is very well aware of that, and that is indeed his intention. Councillor Parr, you also called this minute?
Thank you. Yes, I did. Could the portfolio holder, Councillor Lowdoon, please update us on the number of meetings that have been held to discuss the information and the survey data as per resolution 4 of the scrutiny committee. And this matter is, it's absolutely vital and urgent, because we had at the following scrutiny meeting, we received the performance monitoring report, which showed that staff sickness was of concern. It was marked red. We should have had that report at the March meeting, but that meeting went on so long it was deferred. But I think it's absolutely urgent that we hear that there is some progress, that some meetings have been held to try and come up with some actions to resolve this extremely worrying situation of staff sickness, low morale and bullying. Thank you.
alleged. I think it's very disappointing that the council voted to abolish the position that we had as head of HR, because I think that position is really seriously needed, and it's very sad that we don't have that position anymore. Councillor Loudon, are you able to give a short answer, or do you wish to provide that information in writing?
I'm happy to give a short answer to both Councillor Bond and Councillor Parr, if that's helpful, Chair. First of all, to Councillor Bond, it is me that you're referring to. That's quite clear. And as I made clear to all councillors when I responded to what I felt was a very biased email by the Chair of Scrutiny to me regarding the matter, I have actually referred myself to the monitoring officer under the Code of Conduct because I invited the Chair of Scrutiny to do that if he felt that that was appropriate. He didn't do it, so I said I would do it, and I did it. So I await the process that comes out, and obviously I will abide by whatever comes my way. Secondly, then, to Councillor Parr, most of the heavy lifting in all of this is quite obviously and appropriately being done by the chief executives and his senior officers. I cannot speak for what they have done individually and collectively. I think that would be wrong for me to do so, albeit I have discussed this now on, I'd have to check my notes, 2 or maybe 3 times with the chief executive since the scrutiny meeting. I'm very happy to check my notes and come back to Councillor Parr and tell her whether it is 2 or 3 meetings that I've discussed this with the chief executive. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you, Councillor Loudon. Can I now invite members to vote in favour or against agreeing these minutes, please, or abstain as before?
Okay, Chair, I've got 29 members voting for and 8 members voting against, and 7 abstentions.
Thank you, Sue. The next minutes to be presented are from Councillor Ledger. Minutes of Strategic Planning Committee held virtually on the 23rd of February and the 30th of March 2021. Councillor Ledger, can you present those minutes, please?
He's left, Chair. He's left.
I'm just thinking, hold on a second, I have a feeling he might have left.
He put a message on saying he's leaving.
We don't use the chat function during meetings, so I never check that, but that's fine. Councillor Davey, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I present the minutes of the meeting of Strategic Planning Committee held on the 23rd of February 2021.
Thank you. We have no called minutes on this. Can I ask members to vote in favour or against or abstain, please?
Okay, Chair, I have 39 members voting in favour and 1 against.
Thank
you. 2
you.
abstentions, Chair.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Thank you. Next is Councillor Ragg, who I believe should still be with us. It's so difficult when you can't see everybody on one screen. The minutes of Planning Committee held virtually on the 15th of February, 10th of March, 17th of March and the 7th of April, please.
I formally move these minutes from 213 to 254 consecutively. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I now ask members to vote in favour or against or abstaining for those minutes, please?
Madam Chair, can I make one issue? I think you missed the second Strategic Planning Committee set of minutes. We just voted on the first lot, not on the second lot.
We voted on both at the same time.
Oh,
I called both dates at once.
Oh, thank you.
That was my mistake. Sorry, I didn't read out both dates.
Ah.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Davey.
Okay, Chair, I've got 39 members voting for, 1 against and 1 abstention.
Thank you. Next is Councillor Hawkins, the minutes of Audit and Governance Committee held virtually on the 18th of March 2021.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd like to present the minutes of the Audit and Governance Committee meeting held on the 18th of March 2021, minutes numbers 75 to 86.
Thank you. Can we all vote now, please?
Okay, Chair, I've got 40 members voting in favour, 41 members voting in favour and 1 against. I can't see any abstentions.
Thank you. Councillor Whibley, please. Minutes of Licensing and Enforcement Committee held virtually on the 17th of February.
I'd like to present minute numbers 60 to 67, the minutes of the Licensing and Enforcement Committee on the 17th of February, and would also like to pass on thanks to my Vice Chair, Councillor Bloxham, who chaired the meeting in my absence.
Thank you. Can we vote on these minutes, please?
Okay, Chair, I have 39 members voting for and 1 against. I can't see any abstentions.
Thank you. Councillor Whibley, again, please. Minutes of Licensing and Enforcement Subcommittee held virtually on the 24th of February.
Oh yeah, thank you. I'd like to present the minutes as you've just outlined, numbers 32 to 36, and again pass on thanks to my Vice Chair who chaired it in my absence.
Thank you. Can we all vote now, please?
Okay, Chair, I have 40 members voting in favour and 1 against, and I can't see any abstentions.
Thank you, Sue. That finishes that agenda item. We move on to agenda item 10, learning review and a report from the monitoring officer. So can I ask the monitoring officer to please present this report?
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's a short report. The recommendation is asking Council for a budget of £18,150 and also to give an exemption to contract standing orders, both to allow the appointment of East of England Local Government Association to give effect to one of the recommendations coming out of the Council meeting on the 9th of February, which is as detailed in the report. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry. Are there any questions relating to this? I don't see any questions. Councillor Loudon, obviously you've been involved in this report, so perhaps, I see Councillor Bond. Can I call Councillor Bond first, please?
Yes, I was hoping for a bit more information about the report, because unless I've missed something monumental in between, I thought Councillor Loudon was going to write a report, and I've been waiting for an email from him so that I could give him information. So something's happened in between. I wonder if we could have the full background on this one, please.
Henry. Sorry, Chair.
Councillor Loudon, can you briefly explain the process that's brought us to tonight?
Absolutely. Right. No, I never intended that I would write it, and I'm sure you wouldn't wish me to write it either. What has happened is that poor old Henry has had to have quite a number of meetings with me where we have gone through trying to identify who might be an appropriate person to gather the data, the information, because there are quite a few actors in all of this, both officers and members. And we need to go through, try and pull together the information. Somebody then needs to put it together and to put some analysis behind it. And then we would then need to look at what recommendations for the learning opportunities come out of all of this. So Henry and I have had, as I say, a number of conversations about this, and the correct view that we came to was that it should be, all of this work should be done by somebody external, because there are so many people in this organisation who have had a part in this. And again, then poor old Henry's had to go through trying to identify a number of individuals, a number of organisations, and we've had a couple of false starts. Henry has then eventually managed to land this organisation, which can come in and undertake the review. And I would hope that now that council, I would hope that if council gives approval to Henry's recommendations, we can then start to move forward at pace and try and pull this report together over the next couple of months, and we then get some outcomes the other side. Sorry, it's a bit long and turgid, Councillor Bond.
Thank you, Councillor Loudon. I don't know if Henry needs to repeat the recommendations that we need to vote on. Henry, do you want to do that?
No, as written. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. All right, we need to vote on the recommendations, please. Can you use your voting buttons as before, please?
Okay, Chair, I have 31 members voting for, 9 against and 3 abstentions.
Thank you, Sue. And moving on to agenda item 11, standards complaints procedure. This is another report from the monitoring officer, and I'll ask Henry to present the report. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is probably slightly more in depth, so I'll go into this in a little bit more detail. I mean, firstly, I think it's fair for apologies to be given to Council. This was added so late to the agenda. Essentially, a complication caused by the death of His Royal Highness Duke of Edinburgh, the difficulty over dealing with meetings in the morning period. But the urgency is that with a view to annual council coming, if Council was minded to make changes, it would be extremely helpful to me, at least, in terms of preparation for that, to have that view now, because obviously what I wouldn't want to do is take an assumption to annual council only for in terms of constitutional changes, only for annual council to turn around and say they weren't happy, because obviously that would bring the meeting to a halt there and then. So there is a need for council to express a view prior to annual council to enable me to bring forward the changes, obviously because it impacts on proportional on the committee seat allocations and so on and so forth. So this issue of the assessment subcommittee effectively changing the complaint process has been discussed at a couple of standards meetings prior to the last. and the request was that I bring forward more detailed proposals, which I did, and which is the procedure which is appended to the report before you. Effectively, the committee, albeit in Cora, expressed the view that this should be adopted. The independent representative and one of the town and parish representatives were there, and their views were taken into account, and the draft minutes are appended so that you can see the discussions. But the recommendation is that the revised procedure for dealing with members' code of conduct, which is attached as Annex 2, is agreed along with the associated constitutional amendments that go with that. And then also just to thank Alison Willan, because obviously if the meeting's in court, that can't have been done, is to thank Alison Willan, who was the independent person for 9 years. Her period was extended by a year because of COVID, but to thank her for her service, because yeah, she's done a great job over the last 9 years. So yeah, 2 recommendations before members. I'm happy to take any questions there may be. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I would like to apologise for holding a meeting that was in Cora. It's very embarrassing to have done that as chair. However, I wasn't aware before or during the meeting that that was the case, only after. However, council would have to review these recommendations from scrutiny from standards. So we are here tonight to do that. I saw 2 hands go up. I think Councillor Bond, your hand was up first.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And it was unfortunate that 3 of the 5 voting members were unable to attend the rescheduled standards meeting last week. And from that point of view alone, I'm in complete agreement with the proposal to increase the size of the committee. 5 is a very small committee when we're dealing with some quite meaty issues at the moment. However, what was being discussed was a wholesale change in the way standards complaints are considered and in some instances decided. I have grave concern that this will result in the politicisation of the standards process. But whatever my views, I think this whole issue needs to be discussed with more than just 2 voting members of the standards committee present. We are at the back end of the council year, but with the resolve of all members to improve behaviours in the new council year, a simple increase of members on the committee should be all that's required to agree this evening. I propose, therefore, that we vote to adopt recommendation C, if that's acceptable to Henry as the lead. I don't know how this works on an incorporate set of minutes. And it then follows that the enlarged standards committee can debate the merits of a complaints assessment panel at their first meeting in the new council year. It's vitally important, of course, that we get this absolutely right. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We're not looking at a set of minutes here because the meeting wasn't quorum. This is simply a report, therefore brought straight from Henry with recommendations. But Henry can comment on that in a second, I think. Councillor Thomas, please.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, my little note page has just disappeared. I'm on a similar lines to Councillor Bond, to be totally honest. Really going back, I know we pride ourselves on a council of our standards of democracy, openness and transparency. And I'm concerned that any weight appears to have been given to the standard meeting that was actually in quorum. I've referenced various legal counsel online and otherwise, and plain and simple, actions taken without quorum are void and unenforceable. You might take an action and then try to follow it up with ratification at the next meeting, but that's risky. And at the next meeting, the group has no obligation to ratify something that happened when there was no quorum. If you presume all is well, then you're opening yourself and your group up to potential liability. Don't. Now, based on that, I think we have a bit of a problem of apparent undue haste here. Now, I'm not suggesting any subterfuge in the fact that the meeting on which a lot of this paper is based and the fact that it's come forward now is based is in core, it was in any way intentional. But the fact of the matter is it's acknowledged that it wasn't quorate. So on that basis, I'm concerned about whether we are taking undue haste at this point by supporting this particular paper. Going into that's as a general principle, and members will have to take a view on that, but let's be aware that there clearly are potential legal implications should it be challenged. As a practical basis, I can see in respect of agreeing with Councillor Bond that there is a strong argument based on this problem alone that the numbers be increased. And 7 to me seems a sensible number to make there enough to make it at least sensibly quorate, but hopefully still have enough members attending. But I do have a principal problem of involving members at an early stage in the standards process. But again, I'm not sure we're in a position to really safely resolve and discuss that this evening. So I'd like to ask Henry's comments on deferring it until the first standards meeting of the new administration, please.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. I would like to reassure members a bit, actually, that this has been discussed at several standards committee meetings. So it wasn't just discussed by a few people the other day and then brought here. So it has been subject to a lot of work by Henry over the last few months, based on what other councils do. But I do appreciate we find ourselves in a very awkward situation, given that the meeting turned out to have been inquorate. Henry, can I ask you please to come back and comment on what's been said so far, because I'm not sure about the correct way to proceed with this now.
Certainly. So the issue of the legality, if you like, the inquority, is dealt with by the fact it's now a report from me. So you're not reliant on the recommendations coming out from the standards committee. So that issue is addressed, and hence why the report's been brought forward rather than the minutes. The draft minutes are appended simply so you can see what was discussed. I mean, fundamentally, if members are uncomfortable agreeing a revised process on the basis of what's happened to date, and as councillor and as the chair says, this is not just off the bat on last Friday. This has been subject to quite a lot of discussion and indeed detailed work by me to get to this point. But if members are uncomfortable, then yes, the decision is not to accept that recommendation and to defer it effectively for further consideration by standards at its next meeting. What Councillor Bond, I think, was suggesting, and indeed Councillor Thomas, is the last paragraph of the report, C, is increasing the committee, and I think it's probably right that I would advocate that you do that anyway, that you increase the district council membership to 7, or indeed more if you wanted to. But the difficulty, I suppose, is whether you want to also increase the independent rep from 2 to 3 and the town and parish reps from 2 to 3 without having agreed the procedure, which is what necessitates that increase. There's no reason why you couldn't have it. It's increasing engagement, it's increasing involvement by somebody who's independent and by the lower tier. So it's absolutely fine if that's what members wanted to do. But as I say, that increase was predicated on the changes that were coming through the complaint process. But I would certainly advocate increasing the standards committee size anyway. And I'll leave it for you whether you want it to be 7 or more, if indeed that's what you want to do at all. Thank you,
Chair. Thank you. I think we're left with a slightly confusing situation though in terms of recommendations, aren't we? Because if we agree, and I think many people probably do, that the size of the standards committee should increase, so that we don't run into a situation where we can't have enough members attending, are we also able to make a different decision related to the independent members at the same time? I think we need to think about what our recommendations would be if we're not going through with everything else. There's a couple more people putting up their hands. I think we may find that we want to look at changing the recommendations, but let's see what a few other people have to say. Councillor Skinner.
Thank you, Chair. And I'm going to actually support almost word for word the way Councillor Thomas set out the scene, because in actual fact, if it's not core, it's not clearly we've not followed the procedure, and it does give me certainly a problem, and I'm sure other members as well. The fact that the recommendations come forward as they do is neither here nor there. They may very well be supported, but the fact that the process didn't follow in a proper procedure could actually dictate to say that had other members been there, it may have come forward in a different manner. I fully respect for you, Chair, that you've said that it's been discussed not just at this meeting, but was also discussed at previous meetings, and I fully respect that. But as Councillor Thomas quite rightly pointed out, and was also pointed out by Councillor Bond, is that if we don't follow the process properly, it could lead us perhaps into a bit of an awkward place. I always feel a bit uncomfortable about these things. And considering on the basis we're actually talking about standards, which is the legal operation as to how we operate within the council, it's quite bizarre. Out of all the things that we could talk about that was not core, it's the very standards committee of the sort of the report that's come forward and the recommendations that come with that. So I'm not in support of taking this forward. What I would like to do is not throw the thing out. I'm not totally against whatever's been said, but what I think we ought to do, and just to be properly, is to do things properly, is to just defer this until we've had a meeting, that the Standards Committee have had their meeting, bring your recommendations forward in the correct manner. And I think that's the proper procedure of taking going forward and deferring the meeting. And I'm going to perhaps suggest that is the way forward. I think that's the proper way of doing it, if you mind to have it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Skinner. Councillor Arnott, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm just going to be led by the legalities here and the facts and the advice from Henry. So Henry's made it very clear that this is a report from him. Okay, so he has included in his report the minutes of the standards meeting, which, as it turns out, retrospectively, you were advised, Chair, was incorrect. So I think Henry's done a good job of mopping up something that perhaps you might have been advised at the beginning of that meeting, he wouldn't have gone ahead. So whether the meeting was correct or not is simply irrelevant. The matter at hand is whether the resolutions to council now make sense. And I have to say, there's an awful lot of people banging an awful lot of drums here about their concern about standards and about the threats of alleged bullying, and are we in some kind of meltdown? And what Henry's proposals here are doing is to address that as fast as possible. So what I would like to propose, Chair, if it's okay with you, is that we go for Henry's recommendations as listed. Thank you, Chair. I propose that.
Thank you, Councillor Arnott. Councillor King.
My apologies, Chair. The leader has said all that I had wanted to say, and I'm struggling to take my hand down now, but it's gone. So please, I withdraw. Thank you.
Thank you. I think as chair of that committee, I will say that I wasn't advised at the beginning or during the meeting that we weren't core. I didn't find out until afterwards, after the meeting had finished. In fact, I think it was later or the next day even. I can't quite remember. A lot of work has gone into this proposal and what's written by Henry, an awful lot of thought from him and work from him and discussion based on what other councils do. And it's seen that the benefit of doing this, increasing the number of people who get to see complaints, but not necessarily making decisions on whether those complaints are, whether the person has breached the code or not. It's also about deciding which complaints proceed to investigation and making that more transparent. Investigations cost us money, and the work also takes a lot of time. And I think having more people involved in that process will take the pressure off just the monitoring officer making those decisions alone. And I think it can improve the process, and I think that's why other councils do it. I think it's also important to note that if we were to go ahead with this process, a change, that it would be important to perhaps review it after 6 months, because I'm sure that we would need to tweak the process, because there are a number of changes to be made, and I doubt that we would have got it right first time round. So I think that we should carefully consider whether all this work is worth considering tonight, as it's a valid report from Henry based on an awful lot of work over the last 4 months, and not to throw it out as if it was dreamt up over the weekend, which it most certainly wasn't. I've got 2 more hands up, new hands to bring in. Councillor Loudon.
Thank you, Chair. I hear what colleagues say about whether or not it's the right and proper thing that we should be considering something that's come out of an in-quorum meeting. And I fully appreciate that. And Henry, I think, has explained that he has set out in his report a set of recommendations in order to get to ensure that is, if you like, legalized. But what I would say to colleagues is, right, forget there being a standards committee, forget there was a standards committee that was in quorum. What if we were receiving this report from the monitoring officer, which was guided by discussions at a number of standards committees. That is what I think we have here. I mean, Henry gave a report in the previous item, and that came about without any committee discussion. It came about through a discussion with the portfolio holder. So what you have here is a report from an officer with some recommendations given in good faith. And I think we should concentrate on that. I don't think anybody is alleging that this is a little bit untoward or done deliberately. We're a victim of circumstance. I think that colleagues are talking positively about increasing the number of representatives on the Standards Committee. That seems to be an appropriate thing. The problem we have, and it's a collective problem across all groups and across all of us as members, and that is the number of referrals that are going through the standards regime. And that's down to us individually and collectively. We are clogging the system up. We're making life more difficult. And I would like to think, as Councillor Bond referred to earlier on, that things would get better in the next council year. Do you know what? I have no idea about whether or not any of you, any of us, have any intention of doing that, frankly, because it's not just this year, it's not just last year, it's been a slipping of standards in this council chamber for some time. And it does seem to me that this is an appropriate point at which we put into place something extra to support the existing process. And I would hope that at some point we won't need to use this to any great extent, but that's in our hands, colleagues, all of us.
Thank you, Councillor Loudon. Henry, do you have any further comments?
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's two comments, sort of related, really. Firstly, the recommendations from the Committee for Standards in Public Life made a number of, the report from the Committee for Standards in Public Life made a number of recommendations in relation to procedures and steps that should be taken for complaints. And they are picked up into the revised process, which if we don't have currently, we wouldn't be in accordance with. So that's probably something to bear in mind. The other is that although I've said in the report that I'm reflecting, or it reflects the recommendations from the committee, I should say actually I endorse it as well. In that, as I say, there's been a lot of talk and a lot of work that's gone into it, and I'm quite happy that this is an appropriate step to be taking. So perhaps don't think of it as just coming from two members of the Standards Committee, two district council members of the Standards Committee, but it's something that I'm endorsing as well, which hopefully might help.
Thank you, Henry. I would like to, I've just got an eye on the time, bearing in mind that we do have some motions that we need to debate as well tonight. Can I ask Councillor Rylance to make a very, very quick comment, because you're another member of the Standards Committee?
I just wanted to say, thank you, Chair, that what we have before us are three recommendations from the monitoring officer that were inspired by a discussion between 5 people, which maybe was not a quorum meeting, but 5 very involved people, including one person who has been on the Standards Committee for 9 years and has extensive experience of the process. And I would like to recommend that I would like to second Councillor Arnott's recommendation that we accept these recommendations. I mean, that's all I wanted to do, really, because I think we have talked about this a lot, but I don't think we're trying to do anything untoward. We're just trying to recommend that we make standards more effective and more efficient, and also broaden out its scope, not its scope, but its membership. So I think we should put it to the vote on the basis of Councillor Arnott's recommendation that we accept these recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Rylance. I'm minded to put this to the vote now because I think, and put it to the vote as it is. If we reject it tonight, then obviously the Standards Committee can pick up the topic again and perhaps look at it in a different way and look at the numbers. But I think the simplest thing, rather than trying to change the recommendations on the hoof, as it were, that we put it to the vote now.
If I may interrupt, I'm sorry to be rude, but I sit on standards. You've permitted a member of standards to speak, and I think for balance, I should be allowed to speak as well. Filter is speaking.
Twist, it's not it's not acceptable to shout out in a meeting and demand to be heard.
I'm not demanding, I'm just politely requesting because you're trying to close down the debate and go to the vote.
We've already had considerable debate, and I'm minded that there are other motions to discuss, and I do want to allow sufficient time for those motions because otherwise we'll start to get extremely tired. Councillor Twist, though, if you could please make a very quick comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much for indulging me. It's a very quick point. The Constitution is there for a reason. We have rules by which we're guided. I was involved in the original debate. I fully support the arguments put forward in the debate. All I'm saying is we play by the rules. It's a bit like dispensing with LBW or offside. If you want to kick the Constitution into touch, all I'm saying is expand to 7 as suggested by Councillor Bond and defer to the next meeting of standards. Nothing more complicated than that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Twist. I think as it is the monitoring officer who's brought the report following the discussion about the meetings and what's happened, I rely on his judgment on regarding the Constitution. I will ask now. We put them.
If I may, I put forward a recommendation that the proposal that we vote on increasing the size of the committee, and Councillor Twist has just seconded it, and that was before Councillor Arnott spoke. So doesn't that have to come first?
We can indeed actually vote on the recommendations in 3 parts. I think that might be a very practical way forward. That allows us to take a vote on each point. Henry, would that be acceptable?
I'll be honest, Chair, and say that although I know Councillor Bond sort of advocated accepting point C of the report, I didn't hear it as a proposal and a seconder. So the motion, as far as I'm concerned, that's on the table is Councillor Arnott's followed by Rylance. If by agreement with everybody you want to take the vote on the committee size first, and perhaps come back to others, and then you can have that conversation. But as I see it, the proposal that's on is Councillor Arnott, seconded by Councillor Rylance.
Thank you, Henry. I think the complication is also, as you mentioned, that the increase in size, certainly for the independent and town parish representatives, is related to the change in the procedure. If we increase the numbers, we should perhaps discuss that at a future Standards Committee meeting and do it later. Otherwise, we're mixing up apples and oranges in our votes here because this is all one package. So I think I'll revert to my suggestion that we take the vote on the recommendations as they stand from Henry, and the Standards Committee will then deal with the matter in the future if necessary. So can we please take the vote now, please?
Apologies to interrupt, Chair. Could I ask for a recorded vote?
In that case, we'll have to have a vote on a recorded vote, Henry. I know you love doing this.
Yeah, I love recorded votes. So you would need a seconder for that first, Chair.
Can somebody please second the recorded vote request?
I'll second that.
I'll second. Happy.
Please don't all shout at once. Democratic
I'll second. Happy.
Can pick one of those. Thank you, Councillor Ragg. Right, members, can we please vote as usual on having a recorded vote?
Green tick for yes, red cross for no.
Oh. Green ticks for red, red cross for no.
Chair, it looks like 35 members have voted for and 8 against. I can't see any abstentions. Sorry.
Thank you. So we will now proceed to a recorded vote. Sue, can you read out the names for us?
Yes, of course. Councillor Armstrong.
Abstain.
Councillor Arnott.
For.
Councillor Bickley.
Sorry, for. Sorry.
Councillor Blakey,
Against.
Councillor Bloxham,
Against. Against.
Councillor Bond,
Against.
Councillor Brown,
Against.
Councillor Chamberlain,
I think she left.
okay. Councillor Chapman,
Against.
Councillor Chubb,
Against.
Councillor Coleman,
For.
Councillor Davey,
For.
Councillor Desarum,
Against.
Councillor Dent,
Against.
Councillor Faithful,
Against.
Councillor Gardner,
For.
Councillor Gazzard,
Abstain.
Councillor Hall,
Against.
Councillor Hartnell.
Against.
Sorry, could you repeat that, Councillor Hartnell?
Against.
Against, thank you. Councillor Hawkins,
Against.
Councillor Hookway,
For.
Councillor Hughes,
Against.
Councillor Ingham,
Against.
Councillor Jackson, Councillor Jackson, Councillor Johns,
For, thank you.
is that Councillor Johns? Yes, yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Young,
For.
Councillor Key,
Against.
Councillor King,
For.
Councillor Ledger has definitely gone, hasn't he? Okay. Councillor Loudon,
In favour, Sue.
thank you. Councillor Manley,
For.
Councillor Moulding,
Against.
Councillor Parr,
Against.
Councillor Pook,
Against.
Councillor Pratt, Councillor Pratt, Councillor Ranger,
Or can I just say, Councillor Jackson has just said she can't unmute, but she's here, so you can come back to her.
okay. Councillor Rickson,
For.
Councillor Rowland,
For.
Councillor Rylance,
For.
Councillor Skinner,
Against.
Councillor Taylor,
For.
Councillor Thomas,
Against.
Councillor Twiss,
Against.
Councillor Wibley,
For.
Councillor Woodward,
For.
Councillor Ragg,
For.
Councillor Tom Wright.
Against.
And can I just check with Councillor Jackson, please?
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Thank you, Sue, for.
thank you. Okay.
Have we lost Councillor Chamberlain as well? I think she's having technical problems.
Councillor Chamberlain? Can't see her.
I think she's dropped out.
Yeah, I can't see her in the list. Okay.
Councillor Pratt hasn't come back in, has he?
Councillor Pratt? Shall I, ready to read out the outcome? Chair, I have 20 members voting for, 22 members voting against, and 2 abstaining.
Thank you, Sue.
Chair, I appreciate that the recommendations as proposed have gone down, but are you going to ask whether anybody wants to suggest something about the committee size? And I ask obviously because if there is nothing else now, the committee will stay at 5, and that's the basis upon which matters will be presented to annual council.
Thank you, Henry. I think that's a very good point. Does anybody have a straightforward recommendation to increase the size of the committee? Because I think everybody can see that that's definitely a good idea. And I can see Susie and Ian waving like crazy.
We're going full circle now. So,
yes, we are. Yes, we are.
Yeah. Yeah, so please, if we can have an increase in the number of committee members, that would be really helpful. I think you'd agree.
Can I make it specific that we increase the committee members to 7 members, end of story, park the rest and pick it up in the next administration? If Susie would be willing to second that.
Yeah, I second that.
Can I clarify that's increasing the district council members to 7 and keeping the independent parish reps the same numbers they are now? Is that correct?
If I work with Henry's preference on that. If Henry, in the context of his other comments, would prefer that the other members remain the same, then I'm happy to amend my recommendation according to that.
Henry?
So basically, simply increasing the members to 7.
Yeah, so that's absolutely fine. My rationale for increasing the membership of the other 2 to 3 was because of the change to the procedure. If you were minded, you could do it anyway, which is what I was trying to say earlier when Councillor Bond said about adopting my paragraph C. You don't have to, but that's fine with me. If you want to leave those at 2 and increase the size to 7 of district councillors, that's absolutely fine.
Let's make it as easy as possible for Henry, because you have the sorry, Councillor Gardner, I should have asked to speak first, but because it'd be much easier, wouldn't it, to advertise for a parish or town council rep now, so that they are in place and they are really useful to the committee, aren't they? Really helpful to the committee.
So can I clarify, Henry, your preference is that we increase all of the numbers? Because I do realise that the numbers were based on the change to procedure, not a simple need to increase the number of members sitting on the committee with a vote. And to solve the quora problem, we need more voting members, council members on the committee, not independent people.
Yes, so those 2 positions being increased were simply to deal with the fact that you're having an additional subcommittee that you would have conflicts with probably later down the road. I'm not advocating increasing it to 3 now, but equally, if mindful that it probably will come to pass, then it'll be prudent to try and get that. And of course, what you have a rationale, which is you're increasing the representation from outside of the council, who will then have an input into the work of the standards committee, both from the town and parish rep point of view and also from the independent. So there's a very clear logic to do it and a strong rationale. But from my point of view, I only need to know about the district council one at this moment in time. So yeah, it's not for me to say either way, really.
Bearing in mind that recruiting additional co-opted members is quite difficult, although we had a fantastic response to our adverts the other day, I propose that we vote to increase the number of district council members to 7, and that any further discussion about membership can come from the standards committee itself in due course, and we just leave that.
That's as Councillor Thomas and Councillor Bond have proposed, as I understand it.
Yeah,
yes.
I'm happy to confirm that, Chair. I'm happy with that.
Thank you. Before we go to a vote on that, Councillor Arnott, do you have a quick comment? No, you've dropped your hand. Sorry, you've disappeared again. I've got people flashing all over the screen.
Sorry, it was there. I don't know. It was. Yeah. Thanks, Chair. Very quickly. Obviously, of course, no option but to back what Councillor Thomas and Bond are proposing here. But just a caveat: I hope they can take away as a reflection tonight that what you have done on the basis of 22 votes out of a council of 59 is you've gone against the specific, well thought through recommendations of our own monitoring officer in this respect, for really no particular justification. So whoever, and I would say as to Councillor Thomas, whoever or whatever is the new administration, it's none of their business. This is a matter for standards and for the monitoring officer. It shouldn't be politicised the only way, as you have done tonight. And I think it's really sad. You've chucked out some really good, thoughtful work that has been going through. And the final point I would make to Councillor Thomas and Councillor Bond is, if you want to have an early influence on this, turn up to the meetings, turn up to the standards meetings and contribute, as Councillor Moulding and I did last time. But what we're going to do, whatever the administration is moving ahead, is to wait for reports to come from the monitoring officer and sabotage them in full council. That isn't going to go to the agenda that Councillor Loudon has set out, which is trying to bring the council together. Thank you, Chair. I should be voting with.
I really do want to move on a vote on this because we.
Sorry, Chair. I must insist on a response, right of response.
Because you were named, you were both named by Councillor Arnott. So, but please.
That is correct.
Bear with everybody and be as brief as
Well,
possible.
I'll just keep it very brief. I think that's a rather sad response to losing a perfectly democratically constituted vote. Very disappointing. And also his comments about politicising things. Crikey, I think I'm about the last person who gets accused of that, or I get accused of politicising things in the opposition to every side. And just as an aside, in terms of personal credibility, I think it's disappointing again coming from a member of over a decade who's never either instigated nor been the subject of a standards complaint of any type. So I think that does Councillor Arnott no credit at all, and really very disappointing response. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Bond?
Yes, and very, very quickly from me. I've been on standards for 8 years, bar the 1 year in administration, and haven't missed a single meeting. It was because this meeting was cancelled twice that I couldn't rearrange things, and I had already arranged things for the previous meeting. So I think that comment was unnecessary. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we please now vote on the recommendation to increase the number of district councillors on the committee from 5 to 7, please?
Okay, Chair, I have 43 members voting in favour, none against and no abstentions that I can see.
Thank you. Moving on to perhaps some of the most important business of the night, which always comes at the end and is difficult when we're getting tired in the evening. Agenda item 12 is the first one of our motions this evening to support the Climate and Ecological Emergency Bill. This was one of the motions deferred from the last council meeting in February and is proposed by Councillor Davey. Councillor Davey, can I ask you to speak to the motion, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, well, you'll be relieved to hear that I'm not going to lecture you on the dangers of climate change and biodiversity loss, because you're already well aware of those. However, I am going to say the time for action is now. Actually, it was 50 years ago when we first became aware of the potential danger of taking carbon removed from the environment millions of years ago and stored in the earth and releasing it back into the atmosphere. However, that option is no longer available. So now is the best option we have. And given the pandemic we're still living through and what it's shown us of the potential of government to take swift and drastic action when it has to, we've perhaps never had a better opportunity to change the way we do things as we emerge from the pandemic. Now, you may ask, why is this bill needed? And that is also a question I asked. Hasn't the government already declared a climate emergency and set up the Committee on Climate Change? It's hosting COP26 and has produced various documents and policy initiatives with funding, proposals and aspirations for lowering emissions and restoring biodiversity, funding for nature conservation, a 10-point plan for green industrial revolution, and the recent Bus Back Better report. And it's proud and perhaps a little complacent in telling us that UK carbon dioxide emissions are falling. Unfortunately, that's not the full story. Some progress has been made, but it's not enough, and there's some serious failings. And has anything really changed apart from the effects of the pandemic? Have we seen a massive retrofitting program of home insulation and solar panel installation? No. A huge shift in transport, support for green businesses? It all feels like business as usual. And scientists and environmentalists are warning that we're rapidly burning through our carbon budget, using about 2 to 3 times as much carbon as we should be. And if we're really going to keep temperature rise within 1.5 degrees centigrade, and that's really the best we can do, we're currently not on track to achieve that. And the effects of climate change on the environment, if anything, have been underestimated, with more rapid melting of ice caps and glaciers than predicted, giving rise to dangerous feedback loops. The Climate Change Committee 2020 report shows that only 4 of 21 key indicators were on target, only 2 of the 31 milestones have been achieved, and on 15 there's been only partial progress, and on 14 of them, almost half, none at all. And we can't leave it to future generations to cut even faster and further and cope with the possibly devastating effects of climate change. And planting a few trees and switching to electric vehicles is just not going to cut it. And as well as declaring a climate emergency, the UK government has permitted a Cumbrian coal mine, saying it's a local decision, which I seem to remember was not a criterion that applied when it came to fracking in Lancashire. It's granted new licenses for North Sea oil and gas exploration, and it's cut overseas aid, which could have supported emerging economies in reducing emissions. It supported the appointment of a climate change skeptic to head the OECD. It scrapped the Green Homes Grant, which was one of the good things that they did do. It supported airport expansion and cut air passenger duty on domestic flights, while the French government, in contrast, at the suggestion of its own citizens' assembly, has made it mandatory to use a train rather than a plane if the equivalent is available. And it's progressively cut incentives for electric cars, but frozen fuel duty. It's changed the road tax to a flat fee for all new cars, regardless of their fuel economy. They'll have to admit that EVs are still zero rated. And it's failed to introduce tougher building regs for low carbon buildings, meaning more expensive retrofitting later on, and proposed a 27 billion road building programme. More roads equals more traffic, everybody knows that. And that's not to mention Hinkley Point and HS2. That could fund an awful lot of green initiatives. And there's a temptation to kick this problem further down the road and to suggest, well, we'll wait for the better technology to come along. All the technology we need already exists. And in case you think electric vehicles are a new thing, by the way, try reading the Wikipedia entry, which shows that at one point there were more electric cars in the United States than there were internal combustion engine. And that was in the 19th.
Councillor Davey, can you wind up there, please? I've timed you for 5 minutes.
Oh, okay. The provisions of the bill then require the UK to play its fair role, and as one of the largest emitters we should be, to account for all its emissions and not to outsource those to China and India and so on. To take responsibility for environmental damage along our supply chain. So rather than using palm oil in food products and soya for cattle feed, we consider where those have come from and what damage may have been done in doing them, and take steps to restore damage to our own environment, and sets up a a citizens' assembly that will advise the government on measures that can be taken. So thank you, Councillor Gardner. I will stop there and recommend to Council that we support this motion and support the bill that is currently being presented to Parliament by Caroline Lucas.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. Councillor Woodward, I believe you seconded the motion. Do you wish to speak?
I do. Thank you very much. Just to say that, yes, I'm happy to second. And also that although the motion in words is quite long, there are only 4 short items to resolve. And none of these, are, to me, seem very onerous. It's purely giving support to the bill through Parliament, writing a letter to our MPs, and also giving support to the organisers of the campaign for the bill. So I don't think we're asking too much from this motion, but I would hope everybody would support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Coleman.
Hello, sorry, I'm probably unmuting. Yeah, I want to say I fully support this motion. I think it's a good motion. I hope we can have wide agreement on it. I just want to make one point. There's a recent change announced today. Well, I heard today that the Zoom meetings are being cancelled for councils. I think this is a huge backward step. This is going to make the process of becoming green that bit more difficult. I hope that everybody can do or put pressure on this government to change its mind, even at the last minute, allow Zoom meetings to continue at council levels. I think it's saved travelling to commuting to meetings. It's saved CO2 emissions, and I think this reversion to making physical meetings mandatory is setting a very bad example to the other companies. So I hope that the people behind this change will really think again.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Councillor de Saran, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I have done research from a recent article by Alistair Heath in the Telegraph, which members may have seen, 21st of April it was dated, and Alistair identified 3 major problems with these issues. The first one is planes, where it said that planes would need to carry 4 times the volume of liquid hydrogen than kerosene, and the result would be that Middle England understand the need to put their holidays on hold because of COVID. They won't take lightly to the idea of never being able to fly to Mallorca or Dubai, for example, it said. And then carbon emitting food, it goes on to say, but what if people remain attached to their burgers and steaks? What if the only answer is a carbon tax that pushes up the price of meat, making it unaffordable to millions? And then lastly, Chair, it said, and who will pay for insulating 30 million homes? Who will stump up for converting gas boilers to electric heating or heat pumps? Consumers will not tolerate a green poll tax of £20,000 per home. And that's the 3 key issues which all motions related to carbon problems must address. So thank you very much indeed, Chair, and it's most kind of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rylance.
Thank you, Chair. By way of illustration of why we have to tackle this now and do something now, I'm going to mention I was born at 320 parts per million. My oldest child was born at 360 parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere, which is just beyond the tolerable limit for humanity. My 11-year-old was born at 390 parts per million, and we're now hovering around 420 parts per million. As you can see, it's a problem that is increasing fast, and the more CO2 there is in the atmosphere, the faster the seas rise. The faster the seas rise, the more land we lose into the sea. It's a problem that's accelerating, and I hear a lot of flannel people saying that, oh, we shouldn't be tackling the problems of the world. Well, if we're contributing to them, we should be tackling them. You know, as a first world developed country, we put a heck of a lot more CO2 into the atmosphere than many other countries in the world. And it's absolutely our problem and our issue that we should be dealing with. So we should be tackling every single thing we absolutely can. And to be perfectly frank, we have the money to tackle them. So, you know, I don't really care how many Middle England people don't want to not be able to fly off on five holidays a year, because actually those are the people who are actually causing the problem. And we need to tackle that. And if it's incredibly expensive for them to fly off for 5 holidays a year, then that's what we're going to have to do, I'm afraid. And I do not think that hitting the pocket of people who are in many ways extremely fortunate on the world stage compared to the people who are going to be suffering from climate change is a consideration in tackling climate change. You know, we should do everything we can, and it will cost us money. And we need to accept that, and we need to be upfront with people about that. And we don't need to lie to them and say, there, we can tackle climate change, or we don't need to do it because everybody you know will be gone by the time it even becomes a problem. Because it's a problem now, and it's going quicker, and it's accelerating faster, and it will affect us all, every single one of us. If you like going to the Maldives, you better go there quickly because it will be under the sea quite soon. Don't fly there though. You better swim there or kayak there. Okay, so I would urge you to support this bill. I'm very sorry I didn't get around to seconding it, but or supporting it, because I certainly would have done. It's a very non-onerous request, and I think we should all support it. And I'd be astonished if anybody failed to support it. But thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rylance. Councillor Gazard.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm pleased to be able to support this motion, Chair. I think we all have a responsibility. This climate change started a long time ago, probably when we were children ourselves. So I honestly think that we have a responsibility to, and most of us here are parents and grandchildren and grandparents. So we have a moral responsibility to try and correct what has gone wrong in our time when we were younger, so that we don't give our grandchildren the problems later on. And I hope that Council will be able to support this unanimously. And as was been said, we're not asking for a lot. It's just four points that are important, and I just think that we've got to get on and do it because time is against us. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Skinner.
Thank you, Chair. I struggle with such motions that have been put forward, such as this, because to start with, the sort of members here have suggested that there's only 4 points. Well, quite amazingly, the first point is support the climate and ecological emergency bill. I don't know if anybody, I might just ask, has anybody's actually read it? I haven't read it. I haven't seen it. Perhaps I should have seen it. And that's the way we go forward. As far as aiming the guns at Middle England and whether or not people can or can't go on holiday in planes or whatever it's going to do, I think is a bit of a shot under the belt, to be honest with you. I absolutely agree, and I absolutely support that we cannot go on treating the environment in the way as human beings as we are. But I think that the things we're doing, lots of things in this country to mitigate that, but we are not, as a previous member suggested, we're one of the biggest polluters. We're not one of the biggest polluters because we don't have high manufacturing in this country. The biggest polluters are actually in Southeast Asia and the United States of America and other places in the world, and it's not us. Did we ought to stand up and play our part? Absolutely did we ought to. Do I believe in refuse and recycling and all those things? Absolutely do I. Do I believe in plastics that is going all over? Is it scandalous? Yes, I absolutely do. But just to line up against supporting something that I don't absolutely fully understand and where we're going to go with this agenda, I think there's a big discussion and a big debate that we need to be having and understanding where we're going to be as far as East Devon is concerned, because our remit is East Devon. We're not here to solve all the problems of the world. We're here about where we support and where we sit as East Devon District Council and how we can do and make things happen within our power and our ability to make those things happen within a local authority environment. And refuse and recycling is one we work very successfully on, and I'm sure there are many other things. But planning is going to come our way regarding wind farms, it's going to come our way regarding solar panels and all those things. I hope those members that are saying we need to be green, we need to be this, we need to be that when these applications come along on quite a large scale, I'm quite interested to know where some of these members will sit on that basis, because you can't have your cake and eat it. You can't have every part of it every which way. And there was a slight knocking of Hinkley Point, and perhaps money ought to have been funded in a different way. In my view, this is my own personal opinion, and consider we're talking about a climate ecological emergency bill, which is a government paper. Nuclear energy. It's the way that we've got to go to contemplate looking at how we're going to move towards electricity in the charging of cars and vehicles and all the rest of it. And if that's the way we're going to go, intermittent energy processes are not going to cut it, whether we have wind or solar panels. That is not going to cut the need of energy that we need in this country. And make no mistake,
Councillor Skinner, your 3 minutes are up.
Well, can I just finish off as other members
One
seem to
last
have gone on for
sentence,
about
please,
10 minutes, if you don't, if you just give me just to finish up. So where I'm sitting is that a certain member just said just now that I hope we get a unanimous vote on this. You're not going to get my vote because I'm not going to support this billing going forward. I just don't. I think there's a much bigger debate to be had. And just setting out in this way is not something that I'm going to support. I absolutely support looking at energy, looking at the things, but going on this, no, it's not something I'm going to support. Thank you.
Thank you.
So there is a different argument to be had. Thank you.
Councillor Bickley, please, and I will be timing everybody's 3 minutes. I think that's only fair. Thank you.
I don't think I need 3 minutes. Thank you, Chair. I'm shaking with rage and fear for my children. I really cannot believe what I'm hearing. We can't have planning meetings if we're underwater. You know, we can't sit and have scrutiny meetings if our forests are on fire. This is literally a climate and ecological emergency that we are in. If we don't take action now, as in now, and not in 10 years, 15 years, or slowly in increments, we've got to start it now because it's too late. And if we go past 1.5 degrees, we are all going to be in serious trouble. And it is not the time to put this off. All we're asking is support this bill, put some weight behind it, get all of our councils all together. And yes, we can't sort it out because we're East Devon District Council, but we can add our voices to it. And if we don't do that, we have got a lot of explaining to do to our children and our grandchildren because they're going to be up to their necks in water.
Thank you, Councillor Bickley. I think I would like to actually say something on this as well, and then I think we will see if we've had enough discussion, and I'll let Councillor Woodley speak and I think then we've probably had enough. I'm also shocked to hear members speaking against this, implying that somehow we can't afford to do things that we need to do. We don't have a choice. We've already declared a climate emergency. It's already very, very late. We're already seeing forests burning. We've got fires near here. Our own moorlands are so dry they go up in smoke. We've seen flooding. We're seeing sea levels rising. We saw Australia burning. The droughts are getting worse and other places get much more rain. We have to act, and it is going to cost money. And those of us who can afford to pay it are going to have to pay it. And if we go on less holidays, that's the way it's going to be. I want to be able to live in a planet that can feed me and sustain me and my family. And I think it's shocking to hear that people think that this is somehow a bad idea and we can't afford it. This is an argument about lives. Apparently, money's more important than lives. No, it isn't, not to me. And I will definitely be supporting this motion. Anything that we can do has to be done. And we need to take any action that we possibly can do. I said I would call one more person, and it's Councillor Wibley. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. All the talk of this costing lots of money and things such as that. If you look at the motion that's in front of us, it's really, really simple. Do we support people standing up against the destruction of the environment and basically sounds very dramatic, but the destruction of the world? Of course we stand up against that. So what else can we do other than to vote for these really, really, as Councillor Woodward said, really, really simple recommendations? And for councillors who've spoken in the past about saying, well, East Devon does this, they do all of these little things, so I think this is a distraction. We can do both. We carry on doing the recycling and all of the things that we do to help our local environment here, and we support national action to do it, to support this bill. Both are perfectly fine. It's not like you can do, you know, you have to choose one of the two. So I will be supporting it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Chair, may I ask for a recorded vote, please? Sorry to be so annoying, but may I ask for that, please? Thank you.
You'll be Henry's friend now for asking for a recorded vote. Can I have a seconder for
I'll
a
second
recorded
that.
vote?
I'll second that.
Councillor Thomas, I think, has seconded the recorded vote.
Am I allowed to speak for 30 seconds?
I don't think
30
we need
seconds.
any. We've had people speaking for and people speaking against.
It is a new
very
point,
brief.
Chair.
Very brief, yes.
Thank you very much for that. I think in relation to the MPs, it's very important to recognise that MPs have already passed a declaration of a climate emergency. Further to that, they've also passed the Climate Change Act 2008, on which this particular proposed act bill builds on. So for me, I don't think they should find it too foreign a problem in terms of supporting that as well. So I will be supporting that, and East Devon District Council clearly should do its bit proportionate with that objective. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Can we now have a vote on a recorded vote, please? And everybody vote now using their green ticks, and thank you.
Yeah, green tick for yes for recorded vote, red cross for no.
Okay, Chair, I have 36 votes in favour and 2 against. I don't see any abstentions.
Thank you. Can you read out the names then, please?
Yep. Bear with me. Councillor Armstrong.
4.
Councillor Arnott.
4.
Councillor Bickley.
4.
Councillor Blakey.
4.
Councillor Bloxham.
4.
Councillor Bond.
4.
Councillor Brown.
4.
Councillor Chapman. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, wait.
Okay. Councillor Chubb. Councillor Chubb. Councillor Coleman.
4. No, I'm going to vote against it.
Can you please be careful of speaking when your microphones are still on?
Sorry, can I just check the last? Councillor Coleman, could you repeat what you?
4.
Please? Thank you. Councillor Davey.
4.
Councillor Desarum.
Against.
Councillor Dent.
4.
Councillor Faithful.
4.
Councillor Gardner.
4.
Councillor Gazzard.
4.
Councillor Hall.
4.
Councillor Hartnell.
4.
Councillor Hawkins.
4.
Councillor Hookway.
4.
Councillor Hughes.
Very much 4.
Councillor Ingham.
4.
Councillor Jackson.
4, Sue. Thank you.
Councillor Johns.
4, thank you, Sue.
Councillor Young.
No brainer. 4.
Councillor Key.
4.
Councillor King.
4.
Councillor Ledge is gone. Councillor Loudon.
4, Sue, thank you.
Councillor Manley.
4.
Councillor Moulding.
4.
Councillor Parr.
Abstain.
Councillor Pook. Councillor Pook. Okay. Councillor Pratt.
4.
Councillor Ranger.
4.
Councillor Rickson.
4.
Councillor Rowland.
4.
Councillor Rylance.
4.
Councillor Skinner.
Against.
Councillor Taylor.
For.
Councillor Thomas,
For.
Councillor Twist,
For.
Councillor Wibley,
Wholeheartedly and entirely for. Thank you, Sue.
Councillor Woodward,
For.
Councillor Ragg,
For.
Councillor Tom Wright.
For, Sue, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Okay. Bear with me a moment. Right. 29.
Any more coal on that? Leave it.
Okay, Chair, I've got 39 members voting for, 2 against and 1 abstention.
Thank you. So that is motion is passed. We move on to agenda item 13, motion on the role of the chair of the council. At the request of the proposer and with the agreement of the seconder, this motion has been postponed to the next full council meeting, which should be in July. Moving on to agenda item 14, motion on the future of our high streets. So I'm trying to track my notes on this. I understand actually that the proposer has a suggestion for changing this motion and making an amendment. So if I can ask Councillor Bruce de Sarum to propose the amendment and someone to second that amendment, if that's acceptable. Councillor de Sarum.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. I propose, having consulted with various people, I propose this amendment to read, in the light of the positive response from Simon Jupp MP to the recent letter we sent to him about the future of high streets in East Devon, Council requests that the Cabinet, working cross-party with all Council members, prepare and submit a strong bid benefiting both Exmouth and the Axe Valley to the Government's multi-billion-pound Levelling Up Fund and Community Renewal Funds. We are aware that the Levelling Up Fund is currently open for applications of up to 20 million per parliamentary constituency to regenerate and improve high streets in places like Exmouth and elsewhere in the district. We strongly maintain that the funding provided by government should be utilised to work up appropriate bids which are supported by our local MPs and submitted for the benefit and well-being of our residents at this time of great need. So that is the change, Chair, to the proposed amendment, and obviously I hope a seconder will come forward.
Is somebody seconding that revision? Please just call out if you're seconding.
I will.
Yes, Chairman, I was proposing to second it.
Oh, God. Okay, Andrew, fine.
Yeah.
Have we got that? It was Councillor Moulding is seconding the motion. Councillor de Sarum, do you wish to speak again?
I will speak very briefly, yes. I will speak. Thank you, Chair. Just to quickly set the scene for this motion. Government funding has been discussed at length by this council, and it's now time to draw a line in the sand, work together and grasp the opportunity ahead of us. Recently, members of the Cabinet met with our MPs and engaged in a constructive conversation about the administration's plans for the Levelling Up Fund. The Levelling Up Fund aims to prioritise investments that not only brings economic benefits, but also helps bind communities together. We are pleased that the first round will focus on 3 themes: smaller transport projects that make a genuine difference to local areas, town centre and high street regeneration. And finally, support for maintaining and expanding the UK's world-leading portfolio of cultural and heritage assets. This gives East Devon a variety of options to develop a strong bid, and I'd like to focus on the opportunities for Exmouth. I expect Councillor Moulding, Councillor Hall and others will want to focus on the proposals for the Axe Valley. In Exmouth, a strong bid would combine both regeneration and infrastructure. In Exmouth, the Dean and Way extension has already seen Exmouth Town Council pledge to spend 158,000, which is the equivalent of 1% of the overall cost, towards the cost of this 12 million project, because it is hoped the missing link road will cut congestion and HGVs using the town centre by creating a new connection to the busy A376. We here in East Devon have already pledged 400,000. Furthermore, if you live in the northern side of Exmouth, your choice is very limited unless this extension is built. In addition, this scheme would also benefit Woodbury and the volume of traffic that goes through that parish, which this extension hopefully will relieve some of the issues they deal with. Using Devon County Council's homework as the Transport Authority, the Dean and Way extension should be simple to submit and is shovel ready. If we turn our focus towards regeneration, we know there's work to do to keep Exmouth competitive with nearby communities with shops, bars and restaurants to draw more visitors and increase the amount of money they spend. We've all seen the news that 2 banks will close, and combined with the other empty units, the need for regeneration growing. Using the capacity funding provided by government to work up proposals, East Devon need to explore what can be done to reverse the town's fortunes. Now the council administration is willing to work with our MPs, we have a golden opportunity to submit a bid for Exmouth, which the government can see as a priority for the town. We all recognise that it will need to be exceptional to secure the funding we want, and I know officers will work hard to split the best we can with our MPs' support. Thank you very much indeed, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor de Saram. Councillor Moulding, do you wish to speak to second the motion now?
Yes, please, Chair. Thank you very much. Councillor Bruce de Saram mentioned shovel ready, and I think that's what we would also like to say about the Axe Valley. Certainly in Exmouth, the Deanon Way extension has been something that Exmouth has needed for many, many years, almost as long as I've been a district councillor. And I very much hope that that a bid can be put together to bring forward that potential project. Similarly, in the Axe Valley, the north-south relief road is something that Axminster has been looking for a long time. And it's included in the local plan. A master plan has already been put forward, and the cost of the north-south relief road is something that has caused problems in order to get the development away in the northeast part of Axminster. That particular project is shovel ready. It could go ahead almost immediately once the proposals are put forward. And in my view, it will be supported by our Member of Parliament, and it's essential that our members of Parliament work with us on these schemes to ensure that they are brought to fruition. And therefore, I very much support this proposal, this notice of motion by Councillor Bruce de Saram, that we can work with our members of Parliament to bring these important projects forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moulding. I see a few hands up to speak. I am aware of the time as well tonight, so Councillor Rowland, you've had your hand up right from the start, I believe.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really pleased to be able to speak on this subject because Councillor de Saram is aware that I made him aware on the 14th of April of the meeting that was being held with the 2 MPs involved in this, along with other cabinet members and also officers. So that meeting, which was specifically about the Levelling Up Fund and was to hear their views about what in theory they would support, because anybody that's actually read the prospectus for the Levelling Up Fund that was published in March will realise that any bid needs the support of the relevant constituency MP. I have no problem in actually supporting the amended motion because events have even overtaken that, because the work has already been started by officers. And as recently as this afternoon, shortly before this meeting, I believe that Andrew Wood issued an email out to Exmouth councillors as well about the next steps that would be taken. So I think that demonstrates that work has already started on this. The meeting with the MPs was very cooperative. And although Councillor de Saram has mentioned in detail about what would be involved in the Exmouth bid,
I can't go into details about what is involved in an Axe Valley bid, because from Neil Parish's point of view, his constituency covers more than one district council. And he did request at this stage that we keep any of those discussions about the detail of any potential bid for the Axe Valley private at this stage. So despite hearing what Councillor Moulding has said, we're not at liberty at this stage to disclose what could be involved in that Axe Valley bid. So as I mentioned, we have a very tight deadline as well for bids to be submitted in this first round, because that deadline date is the 18th of June. So time is of the essence of the officers working up a detailed bid and also obtaining the support in writing from the relevant MP. So I hope members will support what is happening at the moment to enable that work to proceed, and specifically for the Exmouth members to be involved in those discussions about what's going to be involved potentially in a bid from the Exmouth end of the district. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Whibley, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm going to be a broken record just for a little bit, but then I will finally change that record. Just to point out to both Councillors de Sarum and Councillor Moulding, this administration has always been willing to work with MPs. I'd just like to say, with regards to this motion tonight, and with a special regard to my motion at the previous full council regarding the Future High Streets Fund, I'd like it to be noted in the minutes that I do not consider this motion to be drawing a line under that or a response to that. And any questions that I had from that meeting haven't been adequately answered. However, and I will change the record now, I strongly welcome the MPs getting involved with us on this, and I hope it heralds a bright new dawn in the working relationship between MPs and councils. And I wish them all luck in securing a positive outcome when the odds are, quite frankly, very heavily stacked against us in terms of the number of councils above us in terms of priority. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Next on my list is Councillor Arnott. Where's Councillor Arnott?
Thanks, Chair. Roland has said. Oh, sorry, I'm still here. Can you hear me, Chair? I think
yes.
I think I might need to plug in. Forgive me. I think the old whatever. I'm losing juice here. There we go. Yes, just to absolutely endorse what Councillor Roland has said, and I'll be happily voting for this amended motion as well. And to back up what Councillor Whibley said, you get these fantastic canards, dictionary required, calumnies even, that go around in this council. I've probably answered about one email a month from Mr. Jupp, who has been shown a great interest in particular Exmouth issues, got into a bit of a pickle over licensing, but has certainly and quite a lot of special pleading over ARG issues as well. So I note Councillor de Sarum's expression, now we are willing to work with our MPs. It's not that we are willing, we have been working with them. They may not have been telling you. So just to tick that point. The second point is a reality check, Groundhog Day, and I think Councillor Whibley is probably bursting to say this. Look, we hope that both MPs come back with 20 million each for us. But doesn't this remind you of what happened before the general election when Exmouth was promised 20 million? I have to say to the people of Exmouth, we will work really hard with Simon Jupp, and I believe he knows that. But if there's a purdah-busting headline over the next week, Tories secure £20 million for Exmouth, you haven't secured 20p yet. Let's see how it goes over the next couple of months. I'd back Councillor Rowland's point as well. It would be lovely to talk more about what may happen in Mid and East, in Neil Parish's constituency. The other problem we have to point out is that sadly, the East Devon part of East Devon is in Tier 3. So Simon has got his work cut out getting this 20 million out. Neil's part is in Tier 2, so he's got a better chance, but you know, we're likely to have to split the taking, so to speak, with Mid Devon. But in general, this is a very welcome amount of money if we can get it.
30 seconds, Councillor Arnott.
And I absolutely agree that moving forward on this, everything that could be done within the chamber, cross-party, is exactly how it should be done. So I'm happy to back this motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I am keeping an eye on our time tonight because we are getting, I'm sure, a little bit tired. So if people could keep their comments really brief, and you know, if people are willing to support the motion, then perhaps we could think about moving towards a vote. Councillor Ragg.
Thank you. And I'd like to reassure Councillor De Sarum that it was a very positive meeting with the MPs, and that certainly I put forward the Dinan Way link and the importance of it in not servicing just the residential development for commuters. It services the Liverton business parks, which are expanding. So that is business, it's employment, jobs, everything. And also to endorse the comments that have been made by the leader. So it was very positive, and we're very hopeful, and we do hope that working collaboratively, and I'm a firm believer in that, that we can perhaps put pressure on our MPs, to put pressure on the government to come up with the funding, which has in the past been promised just before an election, but come on, come up with the goods.
Thank you, Councillor Ragg. Councillor Hall, please.
Thank you, Chair. I will stick the flag in for Axminster and therefore the Axe Valley as well, because we know Seaton, if you put a circle around it, half of it's in the sea. So does the Axminster Master Plan warrant a strong bid for the relief road, which is going to be in excess of £16.7 million? We know there would be bids strongly across the Tiverton and constituency, but 20 million quid could be a real game changer in this neck of the woods. This could really, really help with homes, delivery of the home, with the objectives of East Devon District Council. It would also enable us to unlock the opportunities of getting our sixth form back. The employment on the master plan, 6 hectares of fresh employment space, would be incredibly encouraging for big employers. With the health objectives, where I work alongside Councillor Rowland and Marcus, we are going to be even in a better position going forward. Town centre traffic, a vibrant town centre, and the list goes on. But also, this really does take me back to what we were saying earlier on about the climate and the climate declarations. We need to ensure our communities are resilient, not only for now, but in the future. We are actually only the custodians. We need to be ensuring that we're handing this over to the next generation in fine fettle. I think I've said enough now, Chair. Thank you for your indulgence.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. I also reminded to mention the fact that, you know, if you're standing as a county council candidate, you do have to be aware of PERDA operating, and we just need to be careful what's said after this meeting.
Nothing will be said at all, Chair. Thank you. This is our meeting. Doing my best.
I'm just looking at who we have speaking. If you could keep your comments short now, please, and perhaps somebody would like to suggest that the motion is put. Councillor Gazzard, I believe.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I fully support this motion, Chair, and I'm really pleased that RMP Simon Jupp is now willing to work with East Devon District Council, and I'm grateful for the update that we've received just shortly ago from Councillor Rowlands. And can I put the question that the motion be put to the vote, Chair, please?
Thank you, Councillor Gazzard. Do I have a seconder for that? Megan's put her thumb up in the air. No. Do I have a seconder for the motion being put? Councillor Rowland.
I'm sorry, Chair, but I would like to speak, please, and so would other people.
I'm afraid there has been a proposal to put the motion to the vote, unfortunately.
Well, then, it's outrageous. I'm sorry, it's outrageous. You keep doing this. You keep not allowing people to speak. And it's just,
well,
for the sake of another, I'm sorry, Chair. I'm sorry, Chair, but for the sake of another 10 minutes.
Please do not speak over the chair, Councillor Armstrong.
So you're not allowing
you have an
people to
opportunity.
speak.
You have an opportunity every year to vote for a new chair, and I suspect that's what you will find yourself with an opportunity at the annual council meeting. Members, can we please put this motion to the vote? I've heard a lot of speakers in favour of the motion. Can we please go to the vote? Green tick for yes, red cross for no. Raise your hand if you're abstaining. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, just to be clear, this is for the procedural vote that the question is now put, the motion is now taken. So this is just a procedural vote.
Thanks, Henry.
Okay, Chair, I have 34 members in favour and 1 abstaining.
Thank you.
So it's now the substantive motion to be voted on. Yeah.
I haven't allowed Councillor de Saram to speak again, but Councillor de Saram, I have a feeling that everybody's feeling very positive about your motion.
I just need to thank you, Chair. I just want to thank everybody, and I note the leader himself said it'd be a welcome amount of money. So I hand the rest of the meeting over to you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor de Saram. So if members can please vote on this motion as before.
Okay, Chair, I have 34 members voting for and 2 abstentions.
Thank you. That motion is carried. Thank you, everybody. It's been quite a long meeting tonight, but it was extended by our news of having to meet in person. So that brings our meeting to an end. I'd like to thank everyone, including members of the public watching online, for taking part. Can I just remind all those present that the supporting officer will confirm when the meeting is no longer being recorded or going live. And until then, please note that your comments will be live to the public. Thank you and good night.